Yeah, we are live now. You can check us out on Twitter, Twitch, or YouTube. Twitch is at The Real Cabrera, Twitter is at Ready Player Rich, and YouTube is at Ready Player Rich as well. We are here with the Parallel team and some of the Ready Player DAO team. So I'll let the Parallel guys introduce yourselves. And we're going to play this little behind the scenes of what goes on in Parallel while you do so.
Cool. Koji, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Koji. I'm the lead game designer at Parallel. Initial idea for the game, or the rules part of the game, I guess. Yeah, and I like long walks on the beach.
Nice.
Rebel, after you.
Sure. I'm Michael. I'm on the business team at Parallel, but have a very deep history with trading card games. So very excited to be here.
Hey, everyone. Go by Fitch, which coincidentally is, my actual last name. I don't know if a lot of people viewing know that or if I think it's just a nickname. But yeah, I work on the growth team here at Parallel. Been here since the beginning and just like a huge fan and excited for the conversation today. Kind of break down a little bit of what we're doing. What we've done and what we'll do for the rest of 2023.
Awesome. RPD folk, you guys want to introduce yourself and your backgrounds? These visuals, by the way, are insane. I don't think I've watched the full behind-the-scenes trailer, but this is great.
It's pretty nuts. Yeah, we put it on at NFT NYC and in an actual movie theater, and people were like, "Whoa, this is crazy."
I can hop in quick. I'm Austin McKee at Pillsbury Devil on Twitter. Have a pretty deep TCG background, consistent Mythic or Challenger placer, given for Magic or Hearthstone. Top 200 in the world for Skyweaver. Really like NFT gaming. Really excited about what's being built here at Parallel. Can't wait to dig in more.
Just absolutely flexing on everybody for no reason. That was so uncalled for. DeFi, you want to go? Or Adam?
I'll hop in after Austin just because Austin actually introduced me to TCGs last year and then promptly kicked my butt every time we played. So yeah, thanks Austin for introing me to the world of TCGs and super stoked for Parallel. So I'm an investor at 4RC. We're also invested in Ready Player DAO and members in Ready Player DAO. And yeah, happy to chat with you all.
Cool, and I see Allie jumped on. Welcome to the show.
Hello, happy to be here. How's everybody doing?
Pretty good,
Doing good.
pretty good. We're watching some of these behind the scenes that just like amazing development of some of the art that we've got at Parallel, which looks incredible. I'm like super mesmerized by it.
Yeah,
and just
Tommy on our
ramping
team
up.
would be remiss if I didn't say that this is proof that there's no AI involved here. I think that people get misconceptions with all this new AI tech that maybe we're just spinning up these characters. They're all designed by hand by some of the best artists in the world. Octane and all these different 3D rendering programs. So yeah, there's a lot of love and care that goes into those.
That's awesome. That's a good
Yeah,
topic of conversation as well. Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, totally. No, it's great. My first one of my first Web3 gaming NFTs was the Man. I still have that of it. The artwork is just always blows on every time I see anything. It's so sick.
I was just playing with that card last night, quite a bit actually.
Yeah, I saw you post that there was an intense matchup. I think was that between you and Kalos?
Yeah, that was an intense one. We were wagering some prime and getting into the weeds a little bit. His Earthen kind of came back there. I was beating him down with Markolian, but his Earthen came back. So it'll be interesting to talk about like TCGs with a lot of people who are vastly more skilled than me here. I'm pretty new to the genre, but I've quickly fallen in love with it. So looking forward to getting into the thick of it.
We don't condone prime wagering. Everyone be responsible.
True,
But
we don't.
but if you ever want to challenge me for some prime, I will take you the F down. I don't know if we can swear. Sorry.
Dude, swear
I'll
away,
challenge
swear
you.
away. We're rated R here. Yeah, so I know we have a few other team members from Ready Player DAO. Danny is a core member. Josh is our community lead. Austin introduced himself, and we have DeFi Dad here. But I wanted to jump in because I am really excited for us to watch through the early access announcement trailer and just break down literally everything that I can that's happening in this trailer, and then get some like hardcore questions from the hardcore TCG gamers in this, and see if we can answer some questions that Twitter had. But I'm gonna go ahead and play this. Sounds on, so that we can check this out.
There was a cataclysm on Earth. Humanity had no choice but to flee out into space for a chance at life among the stars. Though not everyone chose the same path, each would advance their way of life far beyond the constraints of Earth. Some, however, were forced to stay behind. But the planet has healed once again, and a vast source of power has awakened. And now, it's almost time to join the fight.
That was pretty clean. Oh, it's not done yet. Oh, I'm cutting it in half. My bad, my bad. Work in progress. So now we join the unranked match and we see some of the gameplay, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we can dive in. There's a lot there, a lot to unpack.
Yeah, I can pause it before we go into this, and we can kind of just, I guess that was like lore introduction. Clearly that was voiced by Carlos for that introduction. But yeah, can you give us a little bit more background?
Yeah, I mean, the video is kind of in two parts. You've got an introductory sort of lore portion. The video is narrated from the perspective of Neve, who is the leader of the Shroud. And we thought that it was important to give her perspective because, as I'll get into, the Shroud are sort of watching what's happening and are sort of mysterious and ominous presence. And so when we kind of went to script this video, we thought it made sense for the leader of the Shroud to sort of be like retrospectively and presently observing events of Parallel and narrating them to you. So, you know, as I mentioned, Shroud is a faction. It's one of 5 factions in the Parallel universe. And so essentially the story starts off, as she describes in the video, with Earth in the, you know, relatively far future, and, you know, looking back at a cataclysm that occurred around the need to create sustainable energy. So essentially the planet became massively irradiated during this event, and they had to flee. Humanity had to flee. And so they built 4 massive ships, fled in 4 different directions, and then one group was left behind. And so that forms your 5 factions. So the group that was left behind is called Earthen. They eventually kind of developed a semi-symbiotic relationship with the planet, and were able to survive the radiation. There was a small, you know, percentage of the population that was able to survive, and they ended up flourishing after that. You know, one group continued off and went towards Mars, and they became the Markolian. They're sort of a high science, imperialistic, militaristic race. And then you have one group that went to Europa, the moon of Jupiter. And because it's a ball of ice, they essentially have no means to grow food. So they end up, you know, cloning food, and they become effectively sterile as a result. And so they have to clone themselves. And so they are the cloning race, right? And we'll get into the strategies associated with all of these factions, as I'm sure you're all sort of more curious about in a bit. One group ends up being stuck on their ship effectively without a stable place to go. And they kind of end up merging with the ship over time. So they sort of augment their body, and they're called Augencore. And then one group is drawn into a singularity. They're drawn into a black hole, and they manage to survive without being destroyed by changing the ship's shields. And they meet something on the other side. They meet a dark presence that bestows upon them certain power. and so they are sent back through the black hole to sort of deliver the message of this being. And so you have these different factions that are, you know, quite distinct from one another. They are life in parallel, right? So they are from a common source, but developed sort of separately and alongside one another in the solar system. And, you know, at a certain point, the reaction that started on Earth, that started this whole story, matures and becomes a perfect source of energy. And all of the different factions detect this, and all of the different factions have their own motivations, as well as claiming this source of energy to take control of Earth. And so the story that Neve is illustrating is basically, you see the ships go in the different directions, you see glimpses of these home worlds, and then you basically have the call to action, which is, it's almost time to join the fight. We've detected something has changed. You know, this new source of energy is now present, and we have to go fight for it. So that's the backdrop of Parallels. Essentially, we're, you know, 10,000-ish years in the future of Earth, with these distinct evolutionary paths of humans that have their own motivations, their own identities, their own ways of being, all coming back to their ancestral home to fight over the ultimate source of power.
Interesting. So, just like first question off the top of my head before I play some of the gameplay aspects of it, do you get to pick a faction and kind of get put into that faction, fighting for that faction, kind of like almost like a guild or something like that, fighting for conquest?
So-
Is there like a larger campaign around that as well?
Currently, the way the game's structured is your deck can only consist of cards from a given parallel, and then we also have a universal pool of cards because, of course, in any sort of war, there's a gray area, people who kind of operate outside the lines and stuff like that. So you don't actually, as a player, get locked into a parallel. You can, you know, build decks from any parallel, but any given deck can only be a single parallel and universal cards.
Awesome. That's super interesting. Someone's asking if there could be faction alliances in the future.
Potentially. I mean, Koji, any words on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are some plans as far as like more of a metagame type situation that we might want to build into the, I don't know, tournaments and whatnot as far as the game's concerned, so that we can kind of see which parallel ends up winning the fight. But you know, for now we're focused on the core gameplay elements, and so we're kind of saving that for a future iteration.
Yeah, and I will say in the lore, certainly you're going to see overlapping narratives with different parallels, right? That's something that will be explored in the next issue of the comic in a certain way. So it's not to say that they are always knife to throat necessarily, right? You know, just as it would be in a war, there's potentially some diplomacy, there's potentially some, you know, situations where people are not actively killing each other, but having a conversation. So I think it's interesting to consider that, you know, there's other layers of the story besides I got a laser and I'm going to, you know, blast you immediately. So.
Awesome. I'll have to figure out the meta later. I'm going to continue the video. I think we've got like 30 seconds left of walking through some of this gameplay, and we can talk around what that looks like too. And I know Allie's got some questions she's like sweating to get out.
Bid thee welcome.
And hey guys, I know when I know when this went out originally from the official channel, you had a cop out that this is like this is work in product, right? This isn't how it's going to be, or maybe can you kind of tell us what we should be thinking about this as far as the demo of like actual gameplay?
Follow victory.
Yeah, so
Enjoy it
I
while
think
you
that this
can.
video is pretty close to gameplay as it stands now, but I think that what we're trying to say is that this isn't the final form of the game, and all of the elements that you see here are still work in progress. Like there's some iconography that's likely going to change. There's some aspects of the play field that are likely going to change. So we kind of like to caveat all of the stuff that we put out, just so that if people get it in their hands and it's not exactly the way that they see it in the video, they're not like, hey, I thought it was going to be, you know, this was supposed to be numbers and now it's pictures or something. Like, you know, people are as I'm learning about the internet, people are very fickle and picky about, you know, what they see. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we went through some of the gameplay as well. I was just watching another one of these trailers as we talked through it. But if we want to jump back, are there any key points that we should highlight and talk over from those gameplay segments that you think are interesting?
Yeah, I feel like maybe if you guys want to touch on some of the major points on the game board and by which you're sort of explaining the core mechanics. Like I feel like that's something that just for everybody's sake, how many cards, how much life, those kind of things. Maybe we kind of just go over some of that.
Sure. So I mean, the game is basically like a lot of these other card games. You're trying to reduce your opponent's health total before they reduce yours to 0. I mean, I've kind of like lived this game for so long that it's hard for me to like really nitpick all the stuff. I'll just kind of go over the stuff that makes it a little bit more interesting or different or what have you. I know I've used this line 100 times, so if you've heard me speak before, apologies. But basically, like I came from a Magic the Gathering background, and one of the things that drove me insane with Magic was the mana system. It was sort of inconsistent. And of course, Hearthstone iterated on that. And I actually like what they did. The sort of 1 mana a turn deal just allows you to plan your deck a little bit better. But I feel like there's a strategic element there that was missing. So essentially what we did is we said, okay, you can take any card from your hand, put it in the bank like you're seeing in the video right there. Or I might be behind, I'm not sure, sorry, or ahead. But essentially you can drag any card once per turn, put it in your bank. And rather than play that card for its intended purpose, it gets turned into our equivalent of mana, which is what we call energy. And that's how you pay for the cards that you want to play. But there's other elements that allows us to do. So we have certain cards that key on if this card is banked, do X, or all the cards in your bank from your opponent's perspective are face down. And we have cards that allow you to turn your opponent's banked cards face up, thus giving you a bit more information about what deck they might be playing, what cards they may or may not hold because they bank them, or they may pull them out of the bank. Of course, we have cards that allow you to steal from your opponent's bank, et cetera, et cetera. So there's just like incorporating the resource generation element into the strategy of the game was a big piece for me. And then you'll notice on the left of the screen there's 2 portraits. Each deck has essentially a leader. We call them paragons. And what they do is they give, for the entirety of the game, a passive ability. So one of them is the second unit you play every turn gets buffed, or another one is whenever a card is sent to the Singularity, which is a Shroud-specific mechanic, look at the top card of your deck and either put it on the bottom or leave it on top, things like that. And you can't see it in this video, but the paragons themselves also have an associated cost. And when you have enough energy, you can just pull them from that side panel as if they were cards in your hand and play them on the field. And they have sort of like an active ability as well. So most of them have, the equivalent of a Hearthstone battle cry or something like that when they come onto the field. Yeah, and they kind of help you with deck construction as well, because their passives and actives kind of lend themselves to certain mechanics in the game. And if you utilize them properly and you construct your deck in the right way, it's certainly more powerful. Did I miss anything?
Magic Commander asks, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically what I did here was, and a shout out to Connor and Carson and the rest of the game team as well. It's not just me, but what we did basically was we took the elements, our favorite elements of our favorite card games, kind of smashed them together, improved upon the things in card games that we didn't like, and we said, okay, I think that's what makes a good game, and now here we are.
Do you have to bank a card to get energy right away? Like, do you have a base 3 energy and then you can bank them to get more? Or do you have to, like, you start at 0 and then in order to get more, you have to bank them?
Yeah. So you start at 0 and every turn you can bank a card, you get an energy. And, I guess you could look at it like a Hearthstone mana crystal. Once you have energy in the bank, it can be depleted, but it'll refresh itself up to the maximum in your bank every turn. Okay. Also, you draw a card at the beginning of your turn, and if you've banked a card that turn, you get to draw a card at the end of your turn as well. Cool. So that you're not kind of starved for resources.
specifically the banked card or just a card?
No, another card from the top of your deck. The bank card stays there unless you have a card that allows you to pull it out.
Got it.
Yeah, hey guys, I love that. I think there's people in the audience from the hardcore TCG gamers like Austin and Ali, and like your team, and then maybe we have people who are very interested in Parallel, maybe with a limited TCG experience. So I'm wondering, Koji, on like what you were asking about the team taking the favorite elements from their favorite card games and like together, maybe just from a high level for people like as in the weeds, like your team and like Austin and Ali, maybe on the TCG side. What maybe tell us a little bit about what are those games and what are those components that are worth highlighting?
Oh man. Okay, well, I mentioned Magic the Gathering. I feel like it's like the grandfather of all of these games. So yeah, so much of almost every other card game that comes after is borrows from that. But I did mention that our bank is there's like a face down card where a series of face down cards that you can be turned face up. And we have also cards that key on if your opponent has a certain amount of face up cards, other cards get more powerful, etc. And to me, there was almost an element of, I used to play a lot of a game called Android Netrunner. And it dealt with a lot of face down cards. And I always loved that sort of thing. Also, there's a sort of like a bluffing, double bluff sort of element when it comes to revealing information to your opponent. And I was a big poker player growing up, made some money doing that. And so I kind of wanted to add that into the game. And of course, like Hearthstone is one of my favorite games. I was actually just playing a little Battlegrounds before the stream. But yeah, so we have like a sort of the turns aren't structured, so we've kind of borrowed that from Hearthstone, where it's just like you can attack at any point, you can play at any point, you can bank at any point, and I kind of like that element of freedom. We also don't have the notion of blocking like Magic does, but we have some cards that have keywords like Defender that allow you to potentially block attacks from your opponent, and so we're trying to find a middle ground between. I find Hearthstone, there's not a lot of interaction when it's not your turn. And Magic, there's so much going on at all times, regardless of whose turn it is, that we kind of had to find a middle ground between the complexity of Magic and the sort of like fast-paced element to Hearthstone. And that's what we tried to do. And hopefully we succeeded.
Yeah, it was like my biggest question I have. I think it's like the key difference between Magic and Hearthstone is the ability to respond, right? It's instant speed, things happening with instant speed, flash, or abilities being able to be activated immediately, and like the concept of a stack. Sounds like the timing in Parallel is a bit more like Hearthstone in that like I'm playing my turn to completion, and then you're going to play your turn, and we'll kind of oscillate back and forth in that way. Or is there things that I can do on my opponent's turn?
So there are things that you can do on your opponent's turn, but generally speaking, your opponent knows that it's a possibility on their turn. So you'll have cards that are activated when your opponent does X, let's just say, or like I mentioned, Defender, and a couple other interactions. So your opponent knows going into it, like, oh, if I do this, it's a possibility that he may or she may respond in this way. And so you as a player whose turn it's not has an opportunity, like a window will pop up and give you some choices and or whatever. There's some interactions there, but it's not it's not quite as cumbersome as Magic, because I find that Magic in person flows so perfectly, but when you play it in a really sort of meticulous way online, the games take forever. And I say that it is my favorite game, so like I'm not casting aspersions or anything. It just doesn't really work digitally for me, and so I wanted to try and find a middle ground.
Yeah, very fair.
Yeah, maybe we should talk a little bit about pace before we hop off of this topic, because I think you alluded to it there. And, compared to Magic or Hearthstone, talk a little bit about the pace of a Parallel game. What is the time to completion average that people could expect when they play?
I mean, it's hard to say what the average is, but we also wanted to keep the game fairly fast paced. So unlike both of those games, you have the opportunity to draw 2 cards a turn, so you can get to your win conditions or your answers faster. Also, the inclusion of banking cards allows you to kind of build in a couple of silver bullets. So we don't need a 2 out of 3 necessarily. You can kind of build in some cards that you wouldn't necessarily use every game, and if they come up, you can just kind of bank them. It allows you to not have to sideboard or anything like that. So our goal is to just try and keep the game as quick as possible, because I feel like, and maybe this is just me being an old man, but I feel like younger people are like, card games are too slow. Give me Marble Snap or whatever. So we're trying to find a middle ground. We keep the game as quick as possible with play interaction and stuff. I would say that like the average game for somebody who's like well versed in the cards, you could probably finish a game in like, I don't know, like 10 minutes, maybe less.
Slightly
Depending on the style of deck. Obviously, if you're playing a control deck, then your goal is to draw things out. Like I'm the worst person to play because my goal is to make my opponent rage quit. That's my win condition basically. So I draw it out as much as possible. But so I'm the wrong person to ask that question, I guess.
Alt is a win con. Love it.
Yeah.
I guess maybe we could go back to some of the basics. I know we hit some of the high level, but is it singleton, or is there play sets of cards, number of cards in a deck? You already mentioned that you can only get cards out of one parallel or universal cards, but maybe just some of like the true basics for some of the people that are listening in.
Sure. So just to reiterate that, the cards are all from a single parallel, and then we also have a universal card pool. There's no ratio that you need to meet, so it can be all universal, it can be all one parallel. It's 40 cards in a deck. Generally speaking, you can have 3 of any card in your deck, except for legendary cards, in which you can only have 1. Was there anything else about deck construction that I missed?
Card types.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no sort of hard limit as far as what the card types you need to put in your deck, but we have 4 types of cards in our game. There are units, which are the soldiers on the field. There are effects, which act like spells and magic, one-time use cards, basically. There are relics, which I guess you could look at them like artifacts in Magic. They kind of live on the board and have an ongoing effect, but don't have stats, so they're a little bit harder to kill. You need to find cards that directly remove them. And then there are upgrades, which you play on your units to augment them in some way, make them stronger, give them additional abilities, stuff like that.
How do you handle fatigue if you get through the entire deck?
So right now, we're still kind of playing with it because, again, we want the game to be snappy. We were doing it sort of Hearthstone style, but we found that some of the decks people were able to draw it out. So we've since changed it to, you draw a card and then you lose a life, then 2, then 4, then 6, then 8. And when you're out of cards, you actually start drawing from your waste pile, which is our, graveyard or what have you. So you get a random card from your waste pile. So you can still kind of have some answers at the end of the game, potentially, and maybe, reinvigorate your win con, because nothing frustrates me more than when I have no cards in hand and I'm just kind of sitting there waiting to die. And I refuse to concede.
That's fair. And positioning, like in Legends of Runeterra, is positioning a big factor in Parallel?
Yeah. So when you play a unit on the field, you can place it either to the left or the right of existing units or in between existing units, because there are some cards that that key on the position of the units.
Cool.
Yeah. Hey guys, I know we want to get into all the questions there from Ali's tweet, and I want to let the like big brain people kind of break this down for the TCG hardcore gamers. I know just as a big fan for a long time, there are a lot of questions on the decks about the NFTs, and I know we want to speak to like a broad gaming audience and just maybe demystify that experience. I know you guys are putting a lot of effort into making sure that this has mass market appeal and ability, and so maybe a question on how you're thinking about mass adoption and the role of NFTs in the ability to play this game.
So I'll let Fitch sort of take over here in a sec, but I will say that I came into this with almost no knowledge of crypto and zero knowledge of NFTs. I arguably still have zero knowledge of NFTs, but I signed on saying, look, the only way that I would do this is if we could make a game for gamers and it had to be accessible to everyone. So essentially, the way it works is we have tiers of cards, and we have starter decks for players. The game will be free to play. And any card that is an NFT, you can essentially get what we're calling an apparition version of the card, which is a non-tradable, non-upgradable, etc. asset that you get, and it has the exact same function, same art, plays the same. So if you don't want to engage with that side of things, you don't have to. But I'll let Frank take that a little further.
Yeah, I think that's super important point to drill home for anyone who's watching this free to play game that's not going to require NFTs. You never have to set up a Web3 wallet if you don't want to. I know that people have various concerns with it, and I think that that's perfectly understandable. My sort of perspective on that is that gamers have been railroaded for years, sort of exploited categorically by game publishers, and this feels like another form of exploitation to them looking from the outside if they don't have as much of a knowledge of what's happening with NFTs. And I get that. So I think that like we never want to put that in your face where it's something that you have to do. It's just if you want to do it, and here's why you might want to do it. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine. So that's kind of the way that you can expect the parallel UX and overall experience to be. An example of that is like after you've played a certain number of matches, you may get a prompt that says, hey, by the way, if you had some NFTs, you might have won this amount of Prime, right? And if you want to win that amount of Prime will be our in-game tradable currency, right? So it's a liquid, value token that kind of flows throughout the ecosystem. You can use it for a variety of in-game activities or purchases or unlocks, potentially certain events may be, gated by that. But broadly speaking, there will be accessibility for everyone, regardless of whether they want to engage with the Web3 component. But just to say that, hey, there's this extra value system, there's this extra benefit system that you can tap into if you want, right? And you don't have to. And so I think that's a really important point to designing a great game that utilizes Web3 is to say, hey, it's just a benefit to you if you want it to be, and if you don't want to touch it, you don't have to. But I think it'll be on us to kind of explain the value proposition to those users who come in, because we do want it to be a mass market game. I mean, we said from the beginning, our goal wasn't to be the best Web3 game. Our goal was to be, the best TCG possible. And we feel like we're in a position now where we are one of the clear leaders in the Web3 gaming genre prior to even delivering the product. And so there's an expectation that the game is excellent and that we are going to appeal to gamers at large, right? And that is who we want to speak with, right? And I think that Ali being here today is a cool kind of like liaison between those worlds, right? She's positioned herself there. We've positioned ourselves there, and we want to continue to sort of explore what being that bridge is like. But at the end of the day, if people don't want to cross the bridge fully to the other side, why should we make them, right? We should be able to give them a quality gaming experience, and that's it. And I do want to pass it to Michael on this one, because I think there's some interesting things in terms of like what it's like to be sort of on the basic end of just, okay, I just want to play the game. I have these apparitions. What's it like to get apparitions? How might they be delivered? And then what's like in the middle. So, I mean, we have recently announced, with Coinbase, we're going to deliver starter packs. So, I mean, Michael, if you want to maybe just talk a little bit about like, what are some of those like waypoints along the journey from, okay, I want to dip my toes in the water to I'm neck deep.
Sure. Yeah. And important note is that, we're just very soon going into alpha. So everything that I say could potentially change. But the goal is that anybody who doesn't want to participate, as Fitch and Coach have already said, sort of can still experience pretty much everything that a person that was using NFT cards or participating in the Web3 side of the game could experience. But the people who do participate in those elements are going to, potentially get more out of those experiences or be able to sort of experience them on a different level. So we're thinking about potentially, different tiers of tournaments where there's sort of a free-to-play level tournament. There's sort of, a middle tier of tournament, and then potentially a premium tournament where it requires, an entry fee in Prime, and maybe your entire deck has to be NFTs. So that's sort of one option that we're thinking of there. There are a lot of instances where if your full deck is NFTs, you're going to get some benefits, but that scales. So if even one or two cards in your deck are NFTs, you're still going to get a little piece of that benefit. So yeah, again, we're a game first and trying to use these Web3 elements to enhance players' experiences rather than impede their experiences and make it harder for them to get into the game. It's really so that we can offer players something more out of the game.
Yeah. I think it's important to note that there's some like overlap too with those things. So like where, there will be sort of like premium competitions, potentially with like a buy-in. There would also be premium competitions that are, the free-to-play quality too. It's not to say that you're completely gate-kept from those things. It's just we want to offer some differentiation and some meaningfulness to laddering up your experience if you choose to do so.
Really quickly, just to bring it back to nerd stuff for a second, like I'm a collector, right? Like here's my box of Magic cards here or whatever. But I grew up going to the card store and looking at the glass case and being like, oh, I wish I had this card and I wish I had that card, and trading with my friends to try and get the cards that I want, and that was exciting to me. And I feel like it would have been different if I was just buying the cards directly from Wizards or something. It wouldn't feel as special or as interesting or whatever. And certainly you wouldn't be able to trade with your friends in that sort of system. And that's what kind of attracted me to this whole proposition, was like, okay, I have these assets, I can trade them. I mean, even growing up, at a point, I was like, okay, well, I'm not playing Magic anymore. Let me sell off these cards to somebody else who, is willing to play, and I can use that money to buy a PS4 or whatever. True story. But like, you can't do that in these other games. And there's just something fun and interesting about like owning those assets and being able to freely trade them. And I think I should also mention very quickly that like, the system that we've currently designed, the number of NFTs in your deck kind of scales the amount of prime you would win in a match, and you're just kind of met with that reward at the end of a match. It's not sort of an intrusive thing where it's just like, we're gonna like hammer home to you all the time, prime, look at all this crypto stuff. Like it's more just like an icing on the cake, like the goal is just make a fun game that you can, because I feel that, again, not to like cast aspersions on Web3 games, but I feel like a lot of Web3 games are like, look at this crazy, interesting, economic system we built, and there's pictures that move. What I want us to do is be like, hey, look at this fun game, and there's like some economic incentive.
That's a great way to summarize it. Yeah, and just last note there, it's exponential. So like, the more NFTs you have, it's an exponential growth rate of what you would earn. So it kind of shows people, hey, like, and I will say this thing as well, which, this is also subject to change, but potentially you could unlock NFTs for free as part of, playing at an elite level. So it's not to say that you're always even going to have to purchase them, right? We can, if you wish, gradually expose you to those things as well, in an unpaid manner. So.
And I think they'll even be borrowing.
Yes.
I know that there's a lot of people, maybe even DeFi dad, interested in things like that. So
yeah,
if you know somebody who's exceptionally good at the game and you have a lot of cards, like there'll be mechanisms in some way. This is not my area of expertise, which is why I'm being extra vague, but there'll be mechanisms in some way that allow you to lend cards to other players.
So
yeah, I'll just chime in that I think if you listen really carefully to the language everyone's even using, like clearly we're at the bottom of like the NFT crypto like bear market. And for whatever reason, there's this very vocal audience out there who have like drummed up all this bullshit in their head that like NFTs are going to like destroy the world that they live in. And I can only compare it to just all other like new forms of technology. It will be adopted slowly and then all at once. And we'll look back and say, why were people throwing a fit over this stuff? It's clearly just adding to the experience. I think like thankfully, like Koji was pointing out, there were a number of players who, basically presented themselves as like a Web3 game. And then they created a sort of a bad narrative where folks were like, wait a sec, do these guys think that we're going to pay money to play their incredibly shitty game? We're going to pay all this money for NFTs just to access it. Where the flip side is here with Parallel, you don't have to benefit from these Web3 elements to start, but they will absolutely enhance the experience. Outside of Parallel, I can give a really quick example of EV.io is like a first-person shooter battle royale type game. Kind of looks like Halo, what every other game, Counter-Strike, whatever. I play it all the time. It's so much fun. I play it every day, probably for 15 to 30 minutes, just as like a mental break. And I could be earning tokens in it actually if I bought their NFTs. I just don't really want to because I know I'm gonna still get my ass whooped by the ones who are playing regularly and owning NFTs. But it's cool. It's been like a really interesting way of how they hint at the fact that I could benefit. I go in, I log in, I play. I think similar to like what I'm expecting the Parallel experience will be. Like, hey, cool, you want to play and have all the traditional sort of expectations of, you know, how you are earning and ultimately building like a reputation in this game. Great. But eventually you will clearly see that it makes sense for you to set up a wallet and to take ownership of this. So yeah, anyways, I think just watch and learn from the Parallel team here. They're definitely setting a standard. So
Yeah, I mean,
one last thing. Sorry, before we move on, I hate to interrupt, but it kills me when we talk about like NFT games or crypto games, just because you know, pretty much every game in existence, you know, uses some form of database or like Amazon Web Services or Azure or something. But you would never be like, hey, that's a database game, or hey, that's an Amazon like web services game, you know. And for us, it's the same. It's like we're utilizing this tech, but it shouldn't be the way that we are defined. Like we are a card game, you know. So anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, it's not even about NFTs. This is about, like you said, being able to trade the cards that you have. Like, as someone who's playing Magic or Hearthstone, whatever else, like, one of the things that, what you mean, Pokemon, when I was little, that's what I was trading around, right? I would go to the pool and trade my, you know, Charizard with someone else's Hypnotic and go home and play with that.
Held on to that Charizard, bro.
Dude, I know. Tell me about it. But it's like, we're just trying to make sure that your digital games work the same way that your physical games used to work, right?
That's why I actually think trading card games are a really good template for what a good Web3 game can be, because it is, excuse the wording, but like it parallels like the physical world like super well. It works pretty much the same as you would expect a trading card game to work in real life, and a lot of people already like that. So the mental lift from going from Halo to crypto Halo is a lot different than going from, you know, trading card game to Web3 card game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the other questions that I've seen pop up in the chat a few times is like, Prime is being used as an entry to some tournaments. Is there any other use for it? Other reasons as to why like a casual gamer would be interested in using Prime and how they would interact with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be a multitude of answers to that question. I would say that we are on the path to become one of, if not the most utility-laden tokens in the gaming world, right? Like, it's there's a lot, you know, we say that the emphasis is on the game, and that's true, but there are also people whose full-time job is sort of engineering, you know, sustainable utility systems for this token, right? And so there's an impressive amount of work that's being done on that. You know, obviously you're going to have the use in Parallel Universe, right? And so I think it's important for viewers who are not familiar with Parallel to also know that like we are building a franchise. This is not just a card game. The card game is our sort of flagship product, right? But it's what ties it all together and gives it sort of material reality. But, you know, we've already produced comics with Raid, who does Marvel and DC comics. You know, we're exploring more cinematics this year. You know, potentially some film and television implications in the future, right? We would love that. And, you know, I think that there's other game formats that are already sort of being actively considered. So, you have to realize that like Parallel is going to be like Star Wars in a way. You know, there's multiple sort of IPs under it And within that, you have one token that sort of bestows access and value upon that ecosystem. And so, within the TCG, there's probably 6, 7, I don't even know how many use cases that you could have for Prime. And then you're going to have all these other ones for everything else under Parallel. And then furthermore, Echelon, who is the decentralized organization that governs the token, can and will also sponsor other games and other types of use cases for the token. So it's kind of a nested, like a Russian nesting doll type thing, where like you have all this layered utility all the way down. And you're going to have many, many different ways to use that token a year from now, 2 years from now. Obviously, we've put out some Prime syncs already, so some ways that you can use the token before the game is even live. Not aware of any project that's even done that, and so there's going to be more before the game is live. And when the game is live, it sort of now opens up a whole new set, like not even one, but like a whole new set of use cases. And then as the franchise expands, you've got a whole new set. And as Echelon opens up, endorsements of or investments in other games and things of that nature, that, again, another set. So it kind of will just continue to grow by chunks is probably the best analogy I could give.
I hope that we become the next Star Wars. I can't wait to bastardize this franchise 20 years from now. But also, I mean, I think it's worth noting that first of all, that you'll be able to buy a lot of the in-game assets with Prime, or convert them to in-game currency, convert it to in-game currency, and then buy the assets using Prime. But we currently have some systems that utilize Prime. So we came up with this thing called Artographs. Basically, you take your NFT card, you throw in some Prime, and it changes the art on the card, and it digitally imprints, I guess, the artist's signature on the card. And there's a very limited number of those, so it's almost like getting your card signed in real life, but in a digital sense. And then we also have this thing called Payload, which we affectionately call in-house the gumball machine. Basically, you throw a very small amount of Prime and a card pops out, and it can be any kind of card. So we've loaded it up with all the way from masterpieces and keys, which are like the biggest assets, to the most common of common cards. And it uses on-chain RNG to determine, okay, bam, you're going to get this card. And there's more sort of fun stuff to come like that. And I think that it's also worth noting that even with all this tech, all this Prime related stuff, the signatures, the gumball machine, everything we do, we always ask ourselves, is this going to be fun? And if the answer is yes, it's let's do it. Because one of the things that was huge for us in the beginning, and I think really helped us grow, is when we were, quote unquote, dropping our NFTs. It wasn't just you hit a mint button on a website and then cards showed up in your wallet. There's a whole animated revealing process, and it was almost like you were opening a pack of cards. The first sort of pack opening experience that we did, I jumped on a call with a bunch of people that were in the Discord. And I think Michael was there. This is maybe before you joined the team. I don't remember the timeline, but everyone was just super excited, and they were all just this reminds me of when I was a little kid, opening Magic cards or Pokemon cards or whatever. And I was just yes, this is it. This is why we're doing this. All the tech is in service of just chasing that experience.
Yeah, and quick plug to our YouTube, Parallel TCG is the handle. We just uploaded the pack opening 6 cinematic there. It's mind-blowing. We already had an insane cinematic, didn't need to redesign a new one, did it anyway, just for the sake of creating an experience, right? And shout out to Kalos, our dear leader, our beloved leader, for kind of instilling in us that vision, right? Which is that you have to blow people's minds. He said that on a number of occasions to me and to us sort of collectively. We have to blow people's minds. So it's what we're supposed to do here. We have to create something amazing, right? That makes you feel that childlike sense of wonder that Koji described. And I get it all the time. That's what drew me to Parallel in the first place. I was a fan before I worked there, it because it gave me that feeling that playing Oblivion or Skyrim gave me, it was just immersion in a cool story, something that feels real, feels like I can be a part of it. And as a result, I became a fan of trading cards. So I think trading card games specifically, I was a Pokemon collector as a kid, but I think it's interesting as an IP, we can bring in fans that way, right? I didn't start as a TCG player. I'm a TCG player now, you know. And so I think it's really cool to have that dual appeal. I'm sure people are foaming at the mouth in the chat for the DK. So should we just do that?
So much free DK going on. I was going to
Free
ask about that
DK, yeah,
next.
So for context here, we have a number of keys that will augment your experience with Parallel. So variety of benefits to owning them. One of them we have saved for last in terms of revealing one of its functions, and we decided we would do it here today. And I feel like the chat is going nuts. Like, I'm checking Discord periodically and seeing some hashtags of free the DK. So yeah, that is probably as good a time as any. And some backstory here is, like I said, we're an IP, it's a franchise, so we're building all these other things. One of the things that we're developing is avatars. We've given some teasers about them. People kind of always ask us, like, when PFP, you know, when are we going to do like our version of that? And naturally, like, we couldn't just do some basic thing. We had to go to this like extreme, ridiculous level, which we have done, and we're going to put out some content relatively soon that will kind of illustrate just like how absurd the process of creating these was. But we kind of wanted to create like real Markolian, real Cathari, real Shroud people. Like, what would real humans in these sort of groups look like and feel like, and what would their gear be, and what would their clothing be, and what would the adornments on the clothing be? So like the amount of work that went into creating these, I think will just blow people away when we kind of reveal more of the process. But that's what avatars are. They're kind of you in Parallel, right? You will be able to own your own real faction character that will be involved in a variety of aspects of the Parallel experience. And so, as a result, we have the DK out of game function being a reservation for a Parallel avatar. So congrats to all the Prismatic key holders, DK, just go key holders, for finally getting to this point of the reveal. I'm sure chat.
Can't wait until we come out with the mutant variants of those PFPs.
Yeah, right.
Where are we looking at this thing for?
What's that?
Where are we looking at it?
For the function?
The DK.
Oh yeah, so it's a reservation for the Parallel avatar.
I think you want to see it though. Where can we find a picture of it?
Oh, the DK? Yeah, if it's called Prismatic Key. If you search it like on OpenSea or something like that, it should pop up. So that's that, and then the avatars is actually, they're on our Twitter banner right now, so you can see what those look like. We're gonna have some like really cool like video content kind of showing more about those, but it's super cool. They've got like gear that you can see in the cards on the body of the character, you know what I mean? So yeah. Like, and the level of work that went into like costume design, right, and like sub-factioning and things of that nature that you wouldn't think like, oh, you could just make some characters, you know, we don't know. But like, again, being Parallel, it's like we couldn't just do that. We had to go into this incredibly deep exercise of like exploring all the nuance of what each faction would literally be like, and what a real character literally would look like in terms of, you know, kind of their facial shape and eye shape and things like that. And that's what's represented in the avatars. So that, I think the quickest way to describe it, if I had to use one line, is like it's you. It's a real character that you can be and sort of embody and live through in Parallel.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of important to note that to bring back the whole nerd element of it is, it's kind of like internet action figure. Our goal is to they're not just faces on Twitter. We're gonna build up full bodies for them and allow you to give them equipment and sort of change the elements of their makeup, and then use them in potentially, I mean, don't hold me to this because we're in talks now, but use them in future Parallel projects. So maybe you get the avatar now, and in a future game you're running around with your avatar and you put a gun on his back and I don't know, jetpacks in his boots or something, and he flies around, or she. But also from a crypto bro perspective, there's we want to give you some utility there too. So if you have an avatar, we'll like having a full NFT deck, we'll modify the emissions of the game so that you can earn yourself more prime as you play. And then of course,
this is a double alpha drop. We're sprinkling it all over here.
Oh, I didn't know that was a secret. Well,
That one,
cat's out of the bag, boys.
I actually was debating with CL whether that was or was not a secret. I can't remember if we said that one yet, but there you have it.
Said
So
now.
avatars, the
Nice.
plan, again, tentative, knock on wood, all the Dave has his disclaimer. Tell Dave to post the disclaimer in Discord, that things are subject to change. But yeah, there would be a modification potentially of Prime for, playing with an avatar that matches your deck.
So we have
Nice.
about
Ogden Core, you got Ogden deck, you win a game, you get the idea.
no. This was great. We have about 5 minutes left on a time that we've slotted here. I wanted to make sure we covered all the questions that Allie had. If not, I wanted to talk about like what's next and what to expect from the team and where to look out for next phases of the roadmap.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to ask some questions about competition and esports plans because I really feel like, giving people the dream of competition is great, especially in the beginning of a game growing to chase that. So, kind of what are your plans there? And is there a tournament mode like directly within the client? Because that was always one of the biggest criticisms from the Hearthstone community with Hearthstone is that there wasn't a tournament mode. So just curious what your plans are.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. I mean, from just like a community and growth perspective, I think that we'll definitely be holding our own tournaments and giving away prizes and whatnot. But we also kind of want to foster the community to do that themselves. So, if there are collegiate enterprises or just like personal enterprises and people want to run tournaments, of course, we'll help them maybe provide some Prime for a prize pool or some NFTs or what have you, because I think the only way that a competitive scene really grows and is sustainable isn't from a company trying to force the hand, but sort of helping the people build it, because otherwise it seems disingenuous and gamers can tell right away, like, oh, this is nonsense. They just want our money. But from an in-game perspective, one of the first things that we tried to push through and are going to do beta time is automated tournaments. So if people are familiar with like Rocket League or whatever, there'll be time slots throughout the day where people can just like open the client, enter a tournament level of their choice and sort of queue up, and we'll have these regular automated tournaments for prizes at regular intervals, because I do think it's like super important. And that's, for me, that's one of the most fun elements of card games. Like I used to love going to the card store and pitting my like insane non-meta deck against these guys who were whatever they were building, and I think this is kind of a fun way to do that.
Yeah, I think that's super important. Like some of my, favorite moments in being a Hearthstone content creator for 8 years is going to dream hacks and LAN events and stuff like that, where, it's third-party organizers and, anyone can put up a competition. So really, really happy to hear that for sure.
Another thing that I should mention actually is we're also very quietly working on a sort of 3v3 team mode. Because I think one of the things that's lacking in the sort of especially digital card game experience is the sociability of playing with your friends. I mean, you can play against your friends, but it's not the same thing as playing with your friends. So the mode that we've got outlined right now essentially is you and two of your friends will queue up into a lobby where how do I explain this? The makeup of everyone's deck, each person can only, one person can only use a given card. So if you will say like Annihilate is one of our cards, it's one of our staple removal cards, it's a universal card. But if you have it in your deck, it means that if I'm on your team, me and the guy beside me can't have it in our deck. So you have to like be super careful with your deck construction and then be communicating while you're playing, because the games will be simultaneous. So if you're playing and your opponent plays Annihilate on you, you're like, okay, you tell your two buddies, like, this other guy doesn't have Annihilate. So like, you don't need to worry about that kind of removal or whatever. But it's like super fast paced, real time stuff. So I don't even know how it's going to shake out, but the idea is to really get people talking with one another as they're playing. And I think that's one thing that's really been missing in card games. So there you go. I don't know if that's
I'm
alpha.
so happy you said that, because card games can kind of be kind of lonely. You're playing by yourself, and so it feels like an untapped area. So
Yeah, we don't all have a Twitch stream to talk to. So
yeah, exactly.
So
I guess that's true. Like when TFT implemented duos, it was like monumental. I was like, oh my god. So I'm super excited for that.
Yeah, I want to shed another little piece on the esports scene. Is we already in active conversations, with a variety of parties on very shortly after full launch having a large prize pool tournament just to kind of come out with a splash. And sure people can kind of guess at the prize pool that I'm talking about. It would be something that would be hopefully headline grabbing, and then we want to kind of think about sustainable systems for that after, right? You can't sort of infinitely do these like large prize pool things, so you want to have them periodically and make them special and bring the right people to them, and then you want to kind of have ongoing systems for competition. So we're trying to look at it both from like a big money opportunity and sort of big event opportunity, down to like the regular, as Koji talked about, like go quickly spin something up day to day. So that and sort of the middle ground there is I think the way that we're thinking about that subject.
Amazing.
Yeah. Hey guys, I love it. I know we're running late. I think we could all talk about this forever. I love that Ali joined us and that everyone here kind of came on and set the time out to talk. A couple of things, maybe like just to note. I know that we talked with the Parallel team here about wanting to kind of be able to discuss what's new with the game, really be able to like communicate information to all of the stakeholders of Parallel, whether that's the Web3 native community, whether that's just your gamer discovering cool lore or a new trading card game to discover. So I know we have the alpha coming up, and we're intending on kind of breaking down more about each Parallel, the deck construction, and really making sure people have resources so that they can learn about the game and participate and discover it in the best way possible. So could you tell us maybe the date of the alpha, maybe so we can put a bookmark in there?
I wish I could tell you the date of the alpha, but it's the plan is February, right? And so we're moving full steam towards that. Koji and so many others are kind of continuously squashing bugs right now. Client looks really cool. It's not the visual polish that it will be in the future, but to see it all come together at this point has been really exciting. And obviously, like functionally, the game is pretty tight, minus the bugs, right? So like we've been play testing this game for how long? 9-10 months. I mean, it's been a long time. So we've had time to like balance and refactor and nerf and buff and do all those things. So notwithstanding like the bugs and like functional breaks in the game, the actual core game is really good and it's really fun. So I think the goal is just kind of squash bugs, as quickly as possible, and then get sort of batches of people in probably. But I don't think that we can give a specific date today. But Koji, if there's anything I missed on that.
No. I don't think you'll have to have us on another stream if you want us to reveal the date. But
which we will be doing, by the way. Is that?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. We're trying to just build in as much leeway as possible because best laid plans and all that stuff. So, I no comment, I guess.
That's
Totally.
awesome.
Well,
Yeah, but people
alpha.
can register now. So I will be the growth guy and shill the thing. So parallel.life/early access/ again, go to that, hit that, type that in.
And if you want early access, send ETH to Mr. Gon.ETH.
Yeah. He accepts bribes.
That's right.
It's to get him to stop. But,
I'm not above bribery.
Yeah, we can't. As best as we try. But no, if you go to parallel.life/early access and check out early access portal there, that'll get you in the queue for, if not alpha, then beta, basically how it works. And then follow us at Parallel TCG on Twitter and most places. That's our handle, some variation like that. And kind of keep tabs if you're interested. If you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, I'd love to just like see how this goes. By all means, kind of take a soft approach and just click a button and follow along, because we're doing some cool shit. I'll tell you that. And we got a lot of stuff for 2023. So Danny, you kind of alluded to that. Like what people can expect for 2023, primarily game rollout, right? This is the year that the game is rolling out. It is a process. Alpha is the first step in that process. Alpha is not the finished product, right? But it will be the majority of this year is a process of rolling out the game. Additionally to that, you've seen the teaser for Comic 2. Insane. Just mind-blowing stuff from Sasha V. And you've seen teasers of the avatars. So these are other things that you can expect. More comic releases, avatars, game rollout, more sort of like marketing around the game rollout. Hopefully working with people like Ali to kind of spread the word about what we're doing here. So this is what you can expect. And I think that that's pretty fair summary.
And if you didn't get your questions answered, just join our Discord. We're always lurking in there at Rebel Spy with any questions, and I'm sure I'll be happy to answer them.
Totally. Yeah. Avoid Card Econ channel as much as you can. Don't ever go in there. Just hang out in general. It's a much more peaceful place. But yeah, Discord is a great resource if you can dodge all the craziness in there. But yeah, we would love to have you. We hang out in there every day and do other things. We play poker together. We play other games together, and we will play a lot of Parallel together when the time comes.
I think Ali mentioned a giveaway pack before we wrap.
Oh yeah, so one random viewer of this stream will get a giveaway pack. One random commenter on her post will also get a giveaway pack. Oof. And then we revealed the mighty DK out of game function as well. It's a great time today. I'm having fun. I don't know about you guys.
No, this has been great. I've learned a lot, and I've been following you for forever. So to still have learned something, it makes a good stream. Amen
to that. So do we have to pick anything right now, or is this like, can we retroactively pick the winners? I don't know. I'm not sure how the live giveaways go. I can't say that I've done one live.
Yeah, why don't we pick someone, and then when we repost the full stream, we can announce the winners there, and then we can coordinate to make sure that they get their stuff from the Parallel side. Does that work?
Should we pick the Twitter comment one now? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, let's do a comment. What should we?
Okay, let me pull it up. Okay.
There's one comment that says, "For great crypto advice," and then it's a long link. I think we should pick that person.
Let's see.
Just close your eyes and scroll. It's hard to pick one.
So true. Okay, I'm gonna do that. Just so we know, okay. You can see me doing it. You can see me closing my eyes. Okay, we landed on Bran. We should actually answer the question if we're going to do this. The defender mechanic allows opponents to interrupt my turn and vice versa. Is there a time limit to make a defending decision? How long is it? Yes. Koji, I don't know if you want to. Yes.
Yeah, there's a time limit. We're still sort of toying with what the right length should be. And I think that at first, the time limits for a lot of things will be extended. I'm actually just working on making them a little bit longer because people need to learn the game. And then once people become more accustomed, I think we might sort of shorten it. But I can't say for certain what the time limits will be. But yeah, whenever there's a prop in your opponent's turn.
It's very embarrassing.
Was it Bran Frost?
Yes, Bran Frost.
And really quickly for the gaming nerds, that timer where you're waiting for your opponent to make a decision doesn't eat away at the time of your turn. So the timer on your turn is essentially paused, so you still have all that juicy APM.
They're already asking when next key function. Unbelievable.
Well, yeah, they'll have to tune in, because we're going to run this back with the Parallel guys as we lead in, and we're going to see if we can get Ali to join whenever she wants. She's always welcome to come on our stream here at Ready Player. We're really excited about just driving Web3 gaming adoption, and really that's just games. And so we want to make sure that everyone who's interested in games or crypto or anything like that, like all of us, that they have all the information in a way that they're comfortable viewing. And so we want to make sure that we get that out here with these streams with the leading teams. Parallel is one of those. So I'm really excited to keep talking. And honestly, at some point, once I confirm what Austin and Ali are down for, we're going to challenge, I think, the Parallel guys and see if we can go
down.
Let's just throw down and put some prime on the table.
I'm gonna get my ass kicked, but it'll be fun while it's happening. So that's,
we'll herd our members and we'll put some money in. We'll make it a high stakes game because I think
I'm
I'll
all
put my
for
money
it.
on Austin and Alley any day of the week. So we're stoked to learn more.
Money.
Thanks for coming on.
I mean, I'm willing to bet internet magic beans, but there's no way I'm betting any money.
Prime on the line. You'll have Prime. You guys have whatever. So I mean, let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
Throw some prize.
Yeah, and I think Danny, we're going to be back on probably for more of these, and I think that we're going to talk maybe a little bit about avatars, probably about each of the factions in more detail. What I would love to be able to start doing, because we're so close to alpha, is saying like, here's how you build a Markolian deck. Here's how you build a Shroud deck. Here's so on and so forth, right? And kind of looking at like why you build the deck that way. And for those of us that have played a few hundred parallel games, like how do we think about the game, right? And how does that contrast with maybe how Ali thinks about Hearthstone or similar games, and like where are the similarities and where are the differences? Those are super fascinating points that we can sort of get into, and I really would love to start talking about specific cards and decks more, because we've been tight-lipped about that up until quite recently, and now it's like, let's go, let's just have these conversations.
Let's do it. Thanks again, everybody, for joining on the stream. Thank you for the parallel teams coming on. Thanks to Ali for coming on and asking some tough questions. We didn't title this streaming episode 1 for no reason, so now we have to have an episode 2. So thanks everybody one more time, and if you haven't already, join the fight at parallel.life/early access.